Friends, welcome back to Cyberscripters. In this session, we are going to learn about lambdas in Python. So basically, lambdas are anonymous functions. So we saw functions in detail. Then we also looked at decorators. In decorators, we saw usage of some higher order functions. Higher order functions are basically functions that take function as an input or returns a function. So generally, lambdas are used with higher order functions. So in this session, we'll look at lambdas, how to define them, how to use them, and how to use them with some higher order functions. So let's just go ahead and create a new Python file. We'll name it as lambda. Now the general syntax of lambda is you start with keyword lambda, then you have an input, and then you have an expression. So this is the general structure of a lambda. So if I give you an example, instance lambda, then input. So y. So these are the two inputs or parameters you can see, and the expression what this lambda is going to do. So this is my lambda. Now I can assign this lambda to a variable. So let's say I say add is equal to lambda xy colon x plus y, and if I say print add 4 comma 5, let's see what it does. See, we got 9. So what is happening here is when I am actually executing this, I'm calling this add, it is calling this lambda, and x and y are filled with 4 and 5, and you get an output. Let's take another example. Let's say I say square root, square lambda x colon x to the power 2. If I say print sqr10, I'll get 10 square, that is 100. So here, this particular lambda is taking only one argument, while the add one was taking two arguments. Similarly, if I want to check if a string has a particular character as character 0, for example, let me say first character is equal to lambda x colon, or let's say str, this is our string, or my str colon, my str 0th character is equal to, let's say, a. So what happens is if first character is a, then this expression would return true, otherwise it would return false. So if I say print first character, and if I pass apple, I'll get true. See, but if it starts with something else, I'll get false. So basically, lambdas work as functions only, but they don't have a name. They are anonymous functions, and generally they are used with higher order functions. Let's define one more lambda. Let's say it is even lambda x colon. I'll say true if x mod 2 is equal to 0, else false. Now, in lambda, the expression has to be in one line. So your expression cannot be multi-line expression. It has to be in one line. So whatever expression you can fill in one line, you can write in lambda. So let's see how this behaves. Print. I am saying is even 10. Oops. Yeah. So I'm getting true. So what is happening is this 10 is passed as a parameter to x, and then this expression is evaluated. If I make it here 11, it would return me false. So generally, the lambdas are not used for code reusability like functions. So functions are primarily used for code reusability. So you want to reuse that code again and again. Lambdas are not used for that generally, though you can use it. But generally, they are designed to be used with higher order functions. So let's define a higher order function and see how lambdas can be useful. So let's say I'm defining a higher order function called return sum. Now, as I told you before, higher order functions are functions that take another function as input. So this is my function and this is my list. So basically, this function is taking two arguments. One is a function and then a list. Now let's define rest of the function. Then I'll explain you. Function of I is equal to 0. Then the result plus is equal to I and done. So what are we doing here? See, I'm taking a function as an input and I'm taking a list. I'm iterating every item in the list. And for each item, I am calling this past function. If that function is return a 0, then I am adding it to my result. So let's say you have a list and you want to take sum of only odd numbers. So what you can do, you can pass that list here and you can write a function which checks if a number is odd or even. If it is odd, it returns true. So if I get 0, then I'll add it to this result. Let's see how lambdas can help here now. Let's define a list first. So let's say my list title is equal to 11, 14, 21, 23, 56, 78, 45, 29, and 28. Let's say this is my list. Now I want to pass this list to return function. But then this function also takes a function as an input. This is where lambdas help us. What I can do is I can write a lambda x colon x. Let's say we want sum of only even numbers. So I can say, see this lambda, let me name it as even. So this lambda returns true if a number is even. Now if I say print return sum even comma error. Let's see what does it print. See, it is printing 129. What it is doing basically? It is adding 14, 56, 78, and 28. I'm getting the output. Now, somebody would ask me then that if it is anonymous, why we are even putting a name to even? That is not required. What I can do is I can directly pass this lambda here. And this should work perfectly okay. So this is actually not required. Now you understand the actual use of lambdas. Lambdas are useful when you want to use higher order functions, right? So now let's say I want to take sum of odd numbers. So what I will do, I'll just change my lambda. And I'm getting sum of odd numbers. Let's say I want to take sum of numbers that are divisible by 3. I'm getting 161. So It is taking sum of 14, 21, 78, 45, and it is returning me these numbers. So this is the actual usage of lambdas. You use lambdas with higher order function. So what we have done here is we have written a higher order function called return sum that takes function as an input. Now for simple thing, you don't want to write a function just to use this higher order function. You can do that. You can write your own function, a regular function and pass it here. That would also work. But if this is something like which can be expressed in a single line, you can use lambdas. Let's see some other usages of lambdas without higher order function. So let me write a lambda for full name and it takes two argument, first comma last. And what it does, it gives you a formatted string. So F, so this is my lambda. What is doing? It is taking two argument, two strings, first and last, let's say. So you have got first name, you have got last name, and you want to join them into a single string, and you want something like full name before that. So now see, if I say print full name, I say John, comma Rambo, what I'll get this kind of complete string, John Rambo. Similarly, I can say you text, say I want to underline a text, right? So how would I write a lambda for it? Lambda, I'm taking string, or maybe my str. Now we'll say formatted output, str dot writer slash n, and then multiplied by length into string. Now let's see what happens. Print new text. Sorry, it should be my str here. Similarly, length of my str. Yeah, see, what we got is underline below John Rambo. So what we are doing here, we are taking a string. We are converting into type dot title. So first character will be capital. Then we are doing a new line because we want this dotted line to be below the name, and then we are drawing that line. Similarly, let's say we want to check if something is palindrome. Is palindrome lambda x colon x dot lower is equal to join reversed x. And let's also convert this into lower. So what we are doing basically, we are taking a string, we are converting it into lower, right? And then what we are doing is we are reversing that string and checking if both are equal, right? So if I say print is parent well, let's see what happens. See, it is giving me true. So what happens is basically this string is equal to reverse of x, and we are just checking it. Now let's see some built-in higher order functions in Python, which are very useful and which requires input as a function, and wherein this lambda would be really helpful. So first is filter function. To use the filter function, let's define a list. So this is my list. Right? Now the filter function, the signature of filter function is filter function and iterable. And what it does basically, what basically it does is it iterates to this iterable and apply this function on each of the elements and filter a list. For example, if I say, let's say filter, let's write our lambda. Let's say I want to filter out even numbers. So x colon x mod 2 is equal to 0. This is my lambda. And then my list. Let's see what happens. See, nothing happened because this filter function returns a iterable. So what we have to do is let's pass this iterable to list. So this will create a list, and let that print this list. See what is happening. My original list was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 9, 8, 10. If I want to filter some items out of the list, there is already a filter function available in Python. But the only thing is you have to tell that filter function how do you want to filter. And that is done through another function. Now you don't have to define a function, you can just write a lambda anonymous function and you can achieve the same thing. Let's say I have another list called str list is equal to, it is a list of string. Let's take some random strings. Now what I want to do here, I want to, I want to filter this list and I want to see if I can find out all the strings that have double A in it. So how would I do it? So I would say filter lambda x. Or now what we want to do? We want to find all the strings that have double A. So we'll say x dot find double A, and that is greater than 0. This is my lambda. Now let's pass the list. Now this would give me an iterable. So I'll convert this iterable into list now finally. And now let's just print it. Let's see what we get. See what we got. We got only two elements out of that list and both are having double A. Reverse, if I want to find out what are the string items who does not have double A in it, I can write it less than 0 and I'll get rest of the strings. Fast test Python. So this is how you can use filter function, built-in Python filter function. For this function, for you to use filter function, you have to pass a function to it. So either you can write a regular function and pass to it, or you can use a single line lambda and you can achieve these things. Another built-in higher order function is called map. Let's see how map is useful. So let's use let we will use the same list, my list. Let's write a map function. So map, again map also the okay. The structure of map is again map function and iterable. So let's say function, let's say map lambda x colon x to the power 2 and let's send my list. Now again this map function also returns a iterable. Let's just convert this into list and finally we'll print it. So what it would do? It would basically give me a new list and the items of the new list would be the element to the power 2. So I get 1, 4, 9, 16, 25, 100. So this is how map works. Map is not filtering. Map is applying your function onto these elements and creating a new list. Right? Now let's say you have this list and you want to convert all these elements into uppercase. How would you do it? So I'll say map lambda x colon. If you want to convert this into upper, you can directly use the str.upper function because that's a built-in function, right? I can say map.upper and I will pass str list. Let's just convert it into list. So here we are not writing our lambda, but what we are doing is we are passing an upper function which is already written in string class. So if you have if you have function available, you can just directly pass it to map or filter function. You don't need to write it. Now let's say print error what it is giving us. See, it has converted everything into upper. Yeah, you can even say dot title. So any function can be passed. Now let's take another use case. Let's say I have a dictionary. So I have a list which has items as dictionary. So for example, let's say name colon John comma address. This address is address 1 comma his designation is let's say manager. So I have a list of dictionaries like this. We need a comma here. What happened? Okay, I need a comma here. I need a comma here. Let's change the names. Let's say take Ria. Let's take address 2, address 3. Let's say CEO. maybe a worker, whatever. So I have a dictionary like this. Now I want a list of only the names out of this. So how can I use map functions? I'll say map. You have to pass lambda, right? So it's a lambda x colon x name. And let's pass our list, right? Let's convert this iterable into a new list. Just print it. See, what is happening here? I'm getting a new list only of names. And this is the power of lambda. So otherwise, you will have to write a function. You have to iterate this entire list and you have to take out this names. Rather than you can use a map function and the map function would work on your list and it will create a new list for you according to the lambda or function that you have passed in. So this is actually very strong feature of Python which you can use. Now let's say the last higher order function is called reduce. So generally filter and map what they do is they apply a function on your list and they give you a new list. While reduce does not do that. Reduce would reduce your reduce your function and would give a single number, maybe a sum or a product or whatever it would be, right? So for example, I would say reduce, you need a lambda or a function. So I say lambda x comma y colon x to the power y. And let's say we pass our list, integer list, where do we have it? Let's say my list. Okay. Reduce, we'll have to import reduce. Reduce is not available by default. So let's just go ahead and import it. So it's a import, sorry, from tools, import reduce. Okay, let's just assign it to a variable, maybe RR. Yeah, let's just print RR. Let's see what we get. See, we are getting this number. So what is happening is it is taking number one to the power number two to the power number three. So that's how it is doing. And you would get this number. I can even say x plus y and get 55. So it is just adding all the elements in the list. So this is how you can use reduce. So in this session, we looked at what are lambdas, how to define them, how you can use lambdas individually. The lambdas are not designed to be used as code reusability thing. They are primarily really designed to be used with higher order functions like filter or reduce, map, or even you can write your own higher order functions like we did here, return sum. So that is all about lambdas. Keep practicing, and if you have any issues, just drop me a comment.